When I sat down with LaDrena Dansby, Anna Pridmore, and Barbara Wagner to talk about women in construction for the April episode of the Design Build Delivers podcast, I promised them we would be done in 30 to 40 minutes. Over an hour later, we were still talking. Now, on some level, I knew there was no way we could tackle such a broad set of issues in the span of one podcast, but that wasn't enough of a reason not to try, right? And I'll bet if we wanted to, we could have talked for at least another hour. But we didn't, and you're welcome. Still, suffice to say, the show's producer, Fred Yee, had to cut a ton of the conversation to get it to a reasonable length. Now, the upside of so much good material hitting the cutting room floor is that means there's plenty left for our bonus content. And this is the first of 3 minisodes from this episode, with LaDrena, Anna, and Barbara coming out in the next couple weeks. This week, in Show Me Your C-Suite, Why Women's Programs and Diversity Initiatives Still Matter, we talk about how the industry is shifting toward diversifying the highest levels at AEC firms, the need to continue supporting networking programs focused on women, and how those programs might not be what you think or what you're used to. When we were planning this episode, we touched on how some particularly younger women in the industry wonder, why is there a need for women-specific programs and networking events? Anecdotally, our guests said some of the women they work with do feel some disconnect with gender-specific initiatives and what they're aimed to address. Barbara touched on some strategies to overcome that disconnect during the longer episode.
We also ensure that men are invited too, because men need to see some of the challenges that we're all facing. And these conferences aren't all about saying how we're different. It's really about helping them with leadership skills, what to look out for. But inviting men to these meetings so that they could become an ally or an advocate is super important too. It's not just the women's club.
And Anna commented in our planning session that some of the women she mentors have wondered aloud, what is the point of these programs? So I asked her to tell us more about what she's heard and how to address it. And that is where we pick up in this bonus episode of the Design Build Delivers podcast, brought to you by US CAD. Now, Anna, when we were planning, you shared a story of a mentee who said, it would be pretty weird to have a men's networking group, so why do we have a women's? Can you share your thoughts on this perspective and the role of gender-specific initiatives in the construction industry?
I really love what Barbara was saying about some of the networking events that her Women in Construction group did, of making sure that they're also including men. So it's not a situation of excluding others. It's about making sure that underrepresented populations have a chance to get together with people who may share similar interests or challenges with others. For example, sometimes working on a job site as a female, working at a certain time of the month is extremely challenging, just even with construction bathroom facilities, things like that, working through how do you navigate that kind of situation where those are unique challenges that may be faced by women. And it's helpful to have someone who maybe understands those types of issues and how to work through them. So it's not in any way about excluding others. It's about allowing the opportunity to share some common perspectives with others, and then make sure that everyone is included to be part of that conversation as well.
Again, it's important to find ways to help support our women and help them through some of the challenges within their careers. Women tend to be more loyal to their teams and sacrifice their ambitions. So women tend to be on their projects longer. We don't want to be self-serving, so we do sacrifice sometimes our careers for our job. There's been a ton of studies out there that say, we need to check all the boxes to move to the next level, where men are more promoted on potential when we're promoted on what have you done, right? So again, there's some of the challenges that we have, but it's really gaining that confidence in yourself and in your abilities to be able to navigate through this career, just like any career.
Thinking about, I don't want to say the disconnect, but Anna, your example of someone saying, this is weird that we need this. How can initiatives like those you've been talking about, how can they shift to meet changes in demand, to meet changes in representation? So how do you address when someone says, why does this lady thing still exist? We don't need it.
One of the things that I think that's really helpful is also beyond having conversations that are just explicitly listed as diversity sessions, also having conversations that are more about workforce development, because that's a word that may be less triggering to others, but fundamentally covers many of the same concepts. When you're trying to develop a workforce, the concepts of making sure everyone feels included, that there's good mentorship, there's good allyship, all of those same concepts that you discuss as part of a diversity, equity, and inclusion related conversations occurs within workforce development. but that's a topic that holistically a broader set of the population can rally behind. So sometimes that's maybe what we're required to be able to help the messaging get to that broader audience.
LaDrena, what does your experience show?
I've not seen a real need to change. The thing about it is we talk about 14% of women in the industry. Now, if you had like a stock portfolio and it performed at that rate, you would be trying to address it, right? So we still need to address it, put whatever label you want on it, but we need to address the success of women in our industry.
I see you nodding, Barbara. What are you thinking?
The challenge is not just that 14%, but when you break it down as to within which level of your career is that percentage, you find that it becomes like 2% at the top level. And then that's the challenge. The last 2 decades, I've focused on the healthcare space and working with healthcare systems. They really want to ensure that their teams, their construction teams, emulate the communities in which they serve. And there's one prominent system here in particular that has asked in our RFQs and RFPs, show me the diversification of your C-suite. So they want to see all the statistics within your organization, but also at certain levels, show me the diversity within your organization. And we're seeing a lot more of that now, especially in some markets and with some clients. And again, not that it needs to be the owners that's going to push all of us to do the right thing, right? But again, it helps.
You know, like they say, every little bit, right? And if Barbara is seeing those changes in the healthcare sector, it's certainly not a reach to say they're happening across other sectors. And thanks to its collaborative nature, Design Build is perfectly situated to help usher in that transition to teams that look more like the communities they serve. LaDrena, Anna, and Barbara talk more about that connection in the longer April episode, Blueprints to Inclusion, Championing Women's Design Build and Beyond. And if you haven't checked it out yet, I give you permission, express permission from me, to prolong today's workout, take an extended lunch, hike the longer trail, drive the scenic route, whatever excuse you need to make, and pop on the April episode of the Design Build Delivers podcast. And make sure you have notifications turned on for upcoming episodes, including 2 more bonus content clips from this conversation, and the upcoming May episode, where we will tackle augmented reality in construction with Merritt Thatcher from Argyle and DBIA's very own Brian Skripak. Thanks for listening, and thanks to our Design Build Delivers podcast sponsor, USCAD. Learn more at uscad.com/DBIA.